Intelligence, commission
Everyone,
men.
it's me once again, the one and only
Is that it?
Kilrodan. So again, I'll be
Yes, sir,
referring
Christian.
to
How
Lost
will you
Media,
choose to
oh
extend your
definitely.
reach
So of
today?
course, specifically when it comes to filmmaking, and again, something in regards of the kaiju genre. It does give me an excuse to talk about something Japanese related, so that's something I reckon. So anyway, when it comes to this series of videos, as I mentioned before on a number of different occasions, just because you found a way into the film industry, that doesn't mean your film would actually get made. And sometimes it won't, I guess. But it doesn't stop anybody from actually attempting to, because there is a good chance that it will. It's just incredibly difficult to do so. But of course, it could be things that can get in the way, maybe creative differences, budget problems, the crew keeps changing, the directors keep changing, maybe nobody's agreeing on a script. There could be a number of different problems that can potentially get in the way. No country is safe from this, unfortunately, because that's how people are. But anyway, of course, you have to think about it. You have to follow some trend, of course, because trends in film come and go when you think about it. Anyway, I guess for this video, I'll be again speaking about yet another unmade Godzilla film. And it will be this one here, folks. Oh, definitely. And I figured to talk about this since I've spoken about quite a few of these anyway for a good while. And this film will take place in a continuity of course, the Heisei series of Godzilla films, which again, like I said before, is definitely my favorite era of the Godzilla films. Of course, and it was going to be released in 1995. Oh, definitely. Which, of course, means a good chance that Mika Sugusa would have been the story some kind of way, because she was in most of these movies. And I'll bring up this individual again because he thought of an idea. And the story itself would have followed the abuse of limited nuclear weapons in conflict zones in the Middle East. And of course, that will ultimately attract Godzilla himself, obviously, so that was definitely be a thing. So yeah, the Middle East would have played a part of the story in some kind of way. And yes, of course, has always been drawn to nuclear energy in various ways, of course. Additionally, three new monsters, yep, three new monsters would appear in countries around the world, transforming into these hideous, gruesome creatures due to the influence of the nuclear weapons that was being used in various conflict zones, of course. And yes, that's gonna be a thing in this movie, quite obviously. And yes, of course, the thing is that there's been tensions with the United States and the Middle East for quite some time. Could even go back to the 1980s and even the 1990s, of course. And the thing is that a lot of people don't really think about this kind of thing. Those, of course, roots on how this kind of thing would occur. So, of course, there's been tension with America and the Middle East that had been going on for quite some time. And yes, Saddam Hussein and all that was taken care of at some point, sure, because of the George W. Bush, and of course, with the whole thing with mass destruction and all that jazz. Yes, that's I would think, but it's been going on for quite some time, which makes the scenario seem like maybe it could have some real life implications, I guess, which in itself is fine. So this doesn't seem much of a stretch concerning the fact that Godzilla films had these kinds of implications when it comes to politics anyway. So this was an actual thing in the films anyway, which I find weird that a lot of people don't really recognize. Not really, they don't bring this up that often. Seems kind of weird that a lot of people just dismiss this kind of thing, because this kind of thing does exist within these films. And a lot of people don't want to talk about this kind of thing, even though this has always been a thing with these movies. So, of course, it just seems like this is going to be one of these types of movies. It's going to be very serious, very somber in some ways, of course, because misuse of power can happen. You can say because of nuclear weapons being used and whatnot, was going to bring in other monsters because of the fight, of course. So this definitely was going to come in, and these monsters would attempt to destroy everything in their paths, of course, to prey upon Godzilla, the ultimate nuclear power source. So these monsters viewed Godzilla himself to be the ultimate nuclear power source. So of course they want to, of course, get to him in some kind of way. They'll be in faraway places, so they want to reach him. But then the thing is that somebody has to make sure that the trouble is prevented, make sure the damages are taken care of, and that's when the G forces come in and deploy their latest and greatest weapons to across the globe in an effort to save many human lives as possible from the threat of the four monsters, the three new monsters, and Godzilla himself, of course. So, and that's the thing. So, what can be possibly come up with to do this kind of thing? Oh yeah, they had a solution. The solution was, of course, Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla was definitely a thing, of course. Mechagodzilla was going to be like an option of this, of course. It was built specifically for some kind of underwater warfare and whatnot, so that was definitely a thing. So this was thought of around the same time when the film Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla was completed in its production. So the Toho company had something in mind with the one individual I showed earlier, whom of course had some ideas, of course, for this type of a movie. And yes, as you can think yourself, this is going to be military heavy type of thing with the foot soldiers and whatever else you can think of, the tanks, the navies and whatever, I guess. And yes, of course, for this time around, this movie was going to heavily center around the G-Force in this movie. Of course, it's going to have some kind of weapons, of course. I mean, yes, obviously, in real life, there's a limited capacity of what Japan can use when it comes to the military and the army and all that. It seems like an entire video on its own, like the whole Iraq thing was mentioned earlier. But anyway, point being is that there's going to be new monsters will be introduced in this proposal based on some rare sea creatures. Yes, some rare sea creatures was going to be introduced as mutants, like actual, real, rare sea creatures just mutated, I guess you can say. So that was going to be all brought up in the climactic battle against Godzilla, of course. And these creatures will have various abilities, of course, and appearances from one another, and the origins of each monster were going to be intentionally made to mirror Godzilla's own birth. It's in some ways because they came to life because of nuclear radiation, just like what happened to Godzilla in the first film. So there you go, born from war. So of course, again, this came to being because humans being dickheads, being complete dickheads, of course. That human beings being the scum of the earth. So if anything, human beings again would have created their own problem. So as a result, this problem would have been fixed again, like has happened quite a few different times and whatnot. So the main idea was to write a proposal that took full advantage of the sea and setting that take place in the first half of Godzilla films when it comes to the climax and whatnot. It does make me wonder what could have been. In addition, there were going to be troops from around the world that were written into the story to take part in a battle against the four monsters. So I'm guessing the American troops from Iraq, or maybe from France, China, maybe. I don't see how that would work because the government in China would be communist. So I don't know how that would work into this exactly. But the idea is that a lot of the nations would team up to fight against these four monsters. Godzilla being one of them, of course. Anyway, so yeah, trying to provide like attempting to provide a movie that's rich in realistic military tactic action, of course, and yes, obviously an underwater Mechagodzilla was also going to be involved in the story in some kind of capacity. To what extent, I'm not sure, but this machine going to be, of course, be created by G-Force, like one of the entries of in this series of films. And so yeah, it's just okay. Like, a good chunk of the film would have focused on the ocean, really. But unfortunately, this film was never realized. For what reason, I'm not sure. I don't know why this was never materialized, really, but it just said it wasn't. Anyway, thanks for watching and take care. See you.